हेलो देयर। कैसे हैं आप? मैं तो बहुत ही अच्छा हूँ क्योंकि आप इस वीडियो तक पहुंच गए हैं। जस्ट किडिंग। वेलकम टू द थर्ड एपिसोड ऑफ डिस्कवर विद सिंह। In this very episode, we'll be discussing sustainability, climate change. Why should you and me worry about sustainability and climate change? How can we improve the situation? Sustainable fashion क्या होता है? Sustainable fashion को कैसे adopt कर सकते हैं? EVs का क्या रोल हो सकता है climate change prevent करने में? All these discussions will be happening in this episode. So I hope you like this. And fun fact, इस एपिसोड में डिस्कवर विद सिंह का 1000th एपिसोड शेड्यूल हो गया है। और ये कैसे हुआ, क्यों हुआ, इसका क्या सेंस बन रहा है अभी, ये आपको एपिसोड देखने के बाद पता चलेगा। सो इफ यू रिकॉग्नाइज एट व्हाट पॉइंट द 1000th एपिसोड वाज डिसाइडेड, डू लेट मी नो इन द कमेंट्स बिलो। एंड यस, नाउ यू कैन हेड ओवर टू द एपिसोड। बाय। Hi there, people. Welcome to another episode of Discover with Singh. And today we have with us Mr. Anveshi, who is a TEDx speaker. He's been an ex-PwC director, and he's now founder of AdQuest Sustainable Solutions. So a very warm welcome, sir, and thank you for joining us. And I'd like to ask you to give your introduction for the people who don't know you.
Thanks, Preet. I don't think there's too much beyond what you said. I think we'll keep it short and sweet, and that's what it is. 20 years is what I've spent in the industry. For the last couple of years, 2.5, nearly about 3 years, AdQuest has been my passion project, and I'm happy to kind of, as we get into the conversation, give you more details of what it is possibly and how it could be relevant for the audience out there.
Absolutely. I just love the word passion projects, and thank you for yourself to join on my passion project as well. So to begin with, sir, I would like the audience to know about your passion project, which is at Quest Sustainable Solutions, more about the organization and what led you to begin, or to bring in such a change in your career and to start with something which is a social initiative as AdQuest.
Yeah, I don't think it was a big sea shift, so to say. And the reason I say that is if I were to go back to what I said, 20 years of my career, I've done IT tech, I've done business consulting, I've done in the latest avatar before AdQuest happened, I was doing smart cities. So in that sense, I had a clearer view, let's say, of what's the kind of challenges out there. And only thing that I had to do is kind of look at those challenges with a lens of sustainability that I had to put on.
Right.
Otherwise, the awareness was always there. It's just that that lens has changed, and that's what possibly is a different one. Having said that, why at Quest? I think the answer is fairly simple. I mean, to answer that, it's as good as me answering why should we even talk about sustainability to begin with.
Absolutely.
And in which case, what I would say is that there's this line that I recall: we do not inherit the planet, we inherit our Earth from our ancestors, but we borrow it from our future generations, right?
Right.
And if that is what it is, you who's just about a 20-year-old, if you and the folks who are younger than you are going to inherit this planet and you're going to have your life kind of for the next decades on this planet, you got to really figure out what that will look like. I mean, that's the pain point that I think has to be addressed. Unfortunately, so we are witnessing far too often incidents and emergencies with respect to climate, uh, incidents that lead to loss of lives, loss of livelihoods, and things of that nature. And I think the time has come. If not now, I think we're just going to miss the ship. And unfortunately, there's no coming back, so to say. So yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate that dawned upon me. It occurred to me at the right time, I would say, before it was too late. And then we began on this journey. And when I began, of course, it had to be extrapolation of what I've done in the past. And when I look back, I've done corporate consulting, I've done business consulting, and then I've also engaged with different stakeholders in my work that I've done. So I said, if that's what has got me here, maybe I just need to add a few more facets to it and make it relevant to the audience of them. That's exactly how we thought we'll focus on the corporates as one of the segments to kind of help them do their impact driven actions at scale. At the same time, we also would want to look at schools, which is the education sector, and what can be done to kind of shape those early
Right.
thoughts in the minds of these young minds. That's the point. that's the crux of it all. I'm again going back to the fact that as we talk about it more and more, I'm sure there'll be layers that I'll unravel and put in front of you in the audience. But yeah, that's the crux of it all, and that's where it all began. So that's at Quest in a nutshell.
Amazing, amazing. Got to know, sir. Great initiative per se for yourself. I am really glad that people like yourself are doing stuff what you're doing. And so basically elaborating on this point that now is the time. I've seen people around myself and with opinions that don't actually take sustainability very seriously and don't realize the fact that now is the time to act. So just wanting to know more from you, probably if you could explain us with a few examples that why do people need to talk about sustainability?
I mean, again, I mean, the why part of it is broadly answered when I said the whole planet needs it so. But
Yes.
in terms of that individual that is probably not yet there, and that's very, very practical, very, very possible in terms of how each of us look at the world out there, right? We
Right.
have our own perspectives. Now, my point is, I think there's got to be a starting point, and that starting point need not be the same for a Preet versus an Anveshi. Each of
Hmm.
us has our own different points where we begin the journey. It could be just as simple as saying, maybe I want to go for an electric car, if that is what keeps you interested. Or it could be as simple as saying, I'm going to eat less of meat, if not avoid meat. I mean, that there's all of those things that have to come to one's mind, and that by itself need not at first instance look like a sustainable move. But if you were to kind of think deeper, there is enough to kind of make it look so, or rather it is so. And with that done, at that very point, if you were to possibly have that nudge to that person who's made that first possible action, not so consciously, but still made that first action, and drive him or her further on that journey with one at a time, there will, and it's happened in my case, and I'm kind of citing my own journey in a certain way, there will
Hmm.
come a tipping point beyond which there's no need for the nudge. The nudge is
Hmm.
no longer a requirement. And it's something that sounds very fairy tale-ish, but let me tell you, if you were to leave it to that a point where the person himself or herself realizes that's what they want to do. It could be just like a kitchen garden. It could be just like a bamboo toothbrush, as simple as that. A toothbrush that you have used every day, which is a plastic one, replace it with a bamboo. It could be just as simple as that to begin with. And then one thing will lead to the other, and it'll eventually get there. But yes, initially the nudges that I'm referring to are far more important to get them to that tipping point beyond which it's self-driven. So yeah, so I think it's about that journey that one has to really go through.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah, great insight, sir. Definitely, I tend to agree with you, and that it eventually becomes a part of you when you go on and on with the process. Then it's just yourself, just an extension of yourself.
absolutely.
Again, coming on to a question, what I want for the people to now know is ki what is basically if you could cite what is happening with the world in the sense that the earth is getting warmer, right? UN says that we need to keep the earth under 2 degrees Celsius within the end of the century. So I want you to briefly elaborate on the point about a few technicalities so the people to understand that what is the a brief science behind it and what is actually happening for them to know the graveness of the issue.
So here's what it is. I mean, I know it'll at some point become a little too jargonish, but I'm going to be cautiously not doing so. But let's still
Absolutely.
go there. So 2 degrees centigrade, you just mentioned that. Now, why is that becoming a number of significance, or rather, it's 1.5 to begin with?
Absolutely.
But I'll get to that. I'll get to that. So century back, go a century back, or maybe even further back, and you will realize that Earth has always fairly had a stable temperature zone around it. It hasn't
Hmm.
really had a shift in temperatures. This morning, I was on LinkedIn and watching a graphic which told me how in different cities in the world that
Hmm.
temperature shifts have happened over the last century. And all of the shifts that we are talking about, when I say shift, I'm talking of an upward shift, right?
Right.
From where a typical average temperature of a city sits to what has happened over the years. And
Hmm.
90 years thereabouts hasn't seen a change at all. But the last 10 years, it's suddenly shot to the point where we've in cities, in a bunch of cities, we've breached the 2 degree mark. I'm sure sitting where you are up north, possibly even Delhi and other cities, you sense that summers are much hotter. You definitely sense, as we speak right now, winters are much
Absolutely.
chilly. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. It may not really require you to kind of look too far forward in the future. It's happening right now. When I said that quote, we're saying we're borrowing it from our future generations. I'm actually going to take my words back on that and saying, while future generations will face the brunt, we today are seeing it. And so
Hmm.
that's the idea of that 2 degrees. If you were to leave it to that point, it's about saying, I just think of an ice cream, right? You know that ice cream, if you were to kind of keep it at a certain temperature, it's good, nice. You can scoop it up and eat well.
Absolutely.
Just that 2 degrees of warming on an ice cream, and that matters so much that it could just melt it down and just
Hmm.
now replace that ice cream image, the scoop of ice cream image, with the planet Earth. And that's exactly what we are talking about. So while 2 degree may sound like ho jayega, we'll probably
True.
if it's summers, we'll probably wear more cotton. If it's winters, we'll wear more wool, and we'll sort it out. It isn't as simple as that, quite honestly, not, because at some point the biodiversity of the planet, the
Hmm.
ecosystems of the planet are taking a hit, because of which flooding happens, because of which something like landslides happen. In other geographies, forest fires happen. All of these are happening. In fact, pandemic as an example, right? Why is the pandemic coming into the picture? Yes, you could always say it came from the bats, but why did it happen? Because at some point, human animal conflict, which is to say that we as humans have invaded the territory of the animal kingdom out there, and then
Right.
they come into our ecosystem, our spaces. Of course, we actually are the ones who are the invaders, and then it's their
Right.
natural
Right.
ecosystem. So they come in, we then start probably coexisting, and then we try to kind of feed off each other in a certain way, and then all of these zoonotic diseases, I think that's what they called, zootonic, zoonotic, one of those terms. But point is, it is those diseases that kind of move from the animal kingdom over to us humans. And that's the crux of it all. uh, you don't have to look too far. Locust attacks, you've probably heard of locust attacks about a year or so, year and a half back.
Yes.
Up north, Rajasthan experienced it, Pakistan experienced it, that's where the farmlands kind of couldn't really sustain it. And
Hmm.
again, why are the locusts coming in, migrating in swarms, and causing that whole damage? It's because of their own ecosystems being affected by what we're talking about. So
Hmm.
that 2 degree centigrade number, as small as it sounds, is significant in terms of the impact it leaves behind.
Absolutely significant.
And now the 1.5, right? The 1.5 is the tipping point. Again, if I were to talk about tipping point in a negative sense, that's the
Yes.
tipping point that the world has been saying, the scientists have been saying, the climate science has been saying shouldn't be breached. And very
Hmm.
unfortunately, so we are already, if you were to average it out across the planet, we are already at thereabouts of 1.2, 1.3. So we're not
We
too
are.
far. We're not too far. And unfortunately, the realization hasn't really reached that scale that it has to reach, that reach the right had the right impact, rather, that it has to have. So yeah, the numbers 2 and 1.5, if you were to kind of keep 1.5 in focus, we would probably still have a very good chance of giving the future generations enough justification of what we did when we had our chances to do it right. That's what it is.
Great word put there,
Yeah.
sir. So basically, people who are listening to this right now, what we establish at this particular moment is the conversation that we are having today about sustainability. You're listening to this conversation about sustainability, which is all of us are doing good in participating in this. And yes, we've established that the problem is real. We need to look at sustainability at something which is very at core of our lifestyles, very at core of our ideology, so that it's not just the UN worrying about the world, it's us also worrying about the world and what to do. So this has been again a decision point where all of us have together established that yes, this is a problem. In the episode forward, we look at what all we can do, if individuals can make a difference, how individuals can make a difference, and then we'll see what else we can do there. So now, sir, bringing upon a popular opinion which I've heard and which I can also honestly not entirely refute myself, is that can individuals bring significant change? Because there's an idea that since there's so many things that are going wrong at such a large scale, people tend to believe that it's only the big industrial changes and policies that can make an impact. So there's a sense of leniency that comes in as an individual mindset. So I want to understand and to inform or tell all the listeners and to enlighten them that if they can make change and if they can make a significant one.
Yeah, I mean, answer is yes, 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 and a yes. But I'll give you a sense of why I say that. Right, that's important. Uh, it's first things first. It's not an either or kind of a question or an answer here. In the
Agreed.
sense that
Agreed.
it's not whether an individual, whether an institution, whether the government should do it. It's about and. Right,
Hmm.
all of it has to happen. Now, when you ask me the question about whether an individual can bring about significant change, I think where we get bogged down is when
Right.
you kind of put that adjective significant, right?
Hmm.
So everybody says, what big deal can I really pull off if I were to do this? Right? Yeah, as an individual, and you look at what you're doing, you may really think that it's minuscule considering planet Earth has 7 billion people out there, right? That's understood. That's understood. But if you leave the aspect of what is significant from a macro perspective, yet look at what you can do at your own level, I'm sure there's multiplication factors will come in and it will all lead to a bigger impact. It's about you doing it. And because you doing it, the person sitting next to you, watching you on a daily basis, watching and observing it, possibly also doing it. And then it
Hmm.
becomes a chain reaction of sorts. So if I were to say, can individuals make a big impact out there? They can if they do, and they get others to maybe observe passively, actively, whichever way it is.
Hmm.
And that is the chain reaction that could make this a bigger impactful approach. At the same time, there's no running away from the fact that the large impact which is immediately desired, we talked of 1.5, we talked of 2, that 1.5 will never happen with individuals only at all. Well, will never happen.
Hmm.
Never.
Hmm.
I'll say all of us making what we doing what we can do is still not going to make it happen. We need an impact at scale in an immediate timeline. And that's why I'm saying
Yes.
that is where the institutional and the public policies and the regulations have to come into place. Private sector has a role to play, public sector has a role to play. And that has to be the immediacy of addressing the issue. So when we talk about what we do, we drive people towards people and institutions, I would say, towards behavioral change. So both of them are important. And that's how we approach the whole conversation at our end. And for that to happen, we clearly know that we have to make a lot of enabling factors come together. Uh, Whether it is when it comes to an individual about the fact that you got to really make it uh, what you call relevant,
Hmm.
accessible, and personal. That's what it is. It should be palatable to that person. If I were to tell
Hmm.
you, Preet, that you got to really do something, if you don't see that to be relevant in the daily lifestyle that you
Absolutely.
are in, you would probably not really feel a sense of purpose to do that, right? And that's the point. It's got to be palatable, relevant for you. It's
Hmm.
got to be accessible. You cannot really ask for moonshots immediately. I mean, it's something that should be still possible, plausible in your daily lifestyle,
Hmm.
and that's the
Hmm.
accessibility part. And also possibly saying, if you wanted to do, are we also enabling these resources to get you to do it, right? I cannot
Hmm.
just say don't have stuff in plastic or food in plastic.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a statement that, of course, I would say a lot of us want to make because we know plastic is causing issues. But let's
Absolutely.
be aware, at this point, there's no big substitute for that. I mean,
Right.
that's the thing. You got to have the right resources. And then, of course, it's about saying you got to find a way to make it very personal.
Hmm.
You as Preet has, like I said, a very different journey that you will take. I, as Anveshi, have had a very different journey. I'll have a different journey as I go forward. Each of us has our own journey points. Each of us has our own tipping points, and all of it is very important. As long as you don't realize that it's got to be personal, you will probably not. I mean, I can preach, but everybody who's listening
Hmm.
to me isn't going to really relate to it if it isn't at the end of the day relevant for his or her daily life. So that's the point. It's got to be that personal bit as well. So that's the individual side, and then there's the institutional side, which also comes into picture. I'm happy to join the dots during the conversation, but importantly, that's where scale is. That's where the
Got it.
large scale impact and immediate changes could come in from that side, right? So
Understood.
yeah.
So, what I've gauged in the explanation that you just gave was that definitely immediate change, for immediate change and change at scale, there's a very important industrial and policy based changes that we need, but in the not very long term, I'll say there has to be and a lot of ands working together to, and build a mindset through achievable small and behavioral changes that we can practically adapt to,
Yep.
so that we build a community in a way that is aware and is focused. And another, adding another point to this, probably, that why or how do, let's take an example of how why governments make certain policies when they want to come into power the next time. They see what the people want from them, right? They
Yeah.
see where the wave is. So similarly with environmental and economical or environmental policies, so to say, sustainable policies, so to say, that if us as people, we demand that there should be something, or there should be pro environment policies, then we can create a wave and actually lead to industrial or policy level framework changes as well. So it's in all, what I've tend to gauged is a mindset that all of us need to adapt, understanding the urgency, understanding it is possible, and creating this awareness. The way I am having a conversation with you guys and Mr. Anveshi today, have this conversation with somebody you know. If this makes sense to you, have this conversation with somebody else, and the solutions that we will be talking about, let's try and implement that, and let's try and create a wave, so that people who are the decision makers cannot shy away from making a particular decision just because the people are not aware. They, like, even if people do not care, why should we eventually care enough to make, or to make such big policies? So that's something I guess, and hopefully it might be insightful for people as well. So in the following section, sir, if we could talk about certain how we can change our lifestyle. So to start, per se, I want to start being a pro environment person, being a sustainable person, make sustainable choices. What are the practices that I can initially adopt, or per se, any young guy or young girl from say 18 to 25, or any person watching us can adopt to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the question is just about looking at your daily life, morning to evening. Of course, you're like going to from the time you wake up to till the time you go to bed, let's say, or maybe even during bedtime for that matter, because ACs are still running. But we'll get to
Right.
that. Yeah. So my point is, we did that. We did that exercise when we came up with our own approach to help individuals transition. And when we did that, we realized there are aspects of a typical daily life. And I'm in this case, let me be very clear, I'm talking of an urban citizen out there,
Right.
because there's of course a solution that's suiting urban India would not be relevant for the rest of the country. And so I'm clearly,
Got it.
and there's a reason we stuck to urban India also, because I think the issue actually has its origins in urban India, what we're talking about in terms of the sustainability challenges that we're facing. When we did that, we kind of narrowed it down to what we would have called 8 tribes of sustainability folks out
Hmm.
there, right? And these are folks who do different things on sustainability, and maybe one is related to the other, but typically, so there are people who are avid nature lovers. They
Hmm.
love the fact that they want to kind of be associated with nature, flora, fauna, birds, insects, whatever, right? And so that's the kind of group that will definitely have a leaning and an inclination if you were to bring them onto the subject of nature or biodiversity, right? So that's one group, let's say. Then there's this other group, especially I would say the demographic that you mentioned in terms of the folks in your age group.
Hmm.
Shopping is a big deal out there today, isn't it? So if you know that you are a shopaholic, or in a certain way, all of us are at some point, and if you are one, is there anything that you need to kind of be conscious about while you are doing your typical shopping choices?
Hmm.
Now that's another tribe. We call them the conscious shoppers, if you were to
Hmm.
kind of give them a name. Then there is the travel folks. So we all have our own reasons to travel from point A to point B. And when we do that, is there a way to kind of uh, watch what we are doing in terms of our
Hmm.
behavior during the travel?
Hmm.
Then that's a tribe we call responsible travelers. So there was
Hmm.
nature lovers, there's conscious shoppers, there's responsible travelers. Then there is someone who's energy conservation kind of a person. Renewable rock
Hmm.
stars is what we call them. So we've
Hmm.
given them fancy names, like you would have sensed by now. And 8 tribes with that whole learning that we did. And when you ask me where should I begin, that's the point I'm saying. What we've done with that tool that I'm referring to. And this one is called the Green Compass. It's on our website. Anybody wanting to go and visit could do that, could easily register, by the way. The Green Compass lays everything in front of you. It's a platter. You have 8 tribes. Each tribe has its own set of checklist kind of an actions. You would really want to know where you want to associate yourself first with. Begin the journey there. What it will do, and that's the beauty of the tool. Begin your journey, and you see, as you say, this is what I have been doing. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. You tick things off, and as you do that, it'll start giving you a visual impression of your impact on your daily lifestyle and on the planet through a dashboard which is about SDGs. So we've got these 17 SDGs which may have come across, your audience may have come across at some point. Now, with those 17 SDGs, they become the global goal for the planet to make sure that we are moving towards a sustainable future. And these are targeted 2030, right? So it is not too far. We are already in this decade. This decade is called the decisive decade. It's called the decade of action because 2030 is not too far. And that's the crucial point in time. So what we're saying, the actions that you would have related to much more easily, go to that particular screen where you can tick them off. As you tick them off, you will see that in your own individual capacity, you have done all you could to contribute to the global goal, while you may not have really consciously done so. You didn't really think that I'm going to go and contribute to 17 SDGs, but you did what you did. And I'm going to tell you, because of this dashboard, that look, you had an impact. And when you said significant impact a while back, this is where you can see that you are actually driving significant impact even in your individual capacity. So that's point one. I know it's going to be a longish answer, but I'll move on.
No worries,
so
sir.
That's individuals and you and me at in our own lifestyle, what we could do. So this is at your home in a particular way. But then, of course, at some point, there are people around you beyond your home, beyond the inner circle. And those are the folks that you kind of interact with, whether it's your friends, whether it's people in your neighborhood, whoever. And those are the friends and people who would probably also see what you're doing. And then they could get influenced. And or maybe I will nudge you. Now, that's the tool again doing it. The tool will nudge you to go for what I would call a level 2. If you were to look at a game, right? You clear level 1, you want to go for level 2. So this has that aspect. So you clear a few actions on the first level, which is the home level, and you do those actions. As you do it, you kind of get points enough to unlock level 2 for you. Level 2 is the community level. Now that will tell you, look, you've done what you could do at the home level. Here's a bunch of things that you would want to consider to do at a community level. And so in this level 2, when you unlock it, the tool will now present to you a bunch of things that you could consider doing at a community level. And as you do that, you will see that whatever impact you were having on the SDGs earlier, now the impact has grown in scale because you're not doing it at a community level, obviously.
Yes.
Your neighborhood, your friends, and whatever I mentioned. Having done that, very few people would have the mojo to go one more level up, and we want to get them there. This is another nudge saying level 2 is reasonably sorted. We are now at a point where we could possibly unlock this next level, which is the city. So you've done home, you've done community, now you go to city. What you could do at a city level, engage with the authorities out there and probably do something much more meaningful together rather than in isolation or rather within your community. That's a biggie. If you get there, then you kind of done everything in your own capacity to kind of make an impact out there. So to begin with, it could be anything on those 8 tribes I mentioned. And then the journey is just about moving on and on over a period of time towards the community and the city. And that's the beauty of the whole journey. Whether it is done through the Green Compass, outside the Green Compass, I think the journey remains the same. It's just that the Green Compass is a good reference point for you. It'll help you rather than leave it to you and for you to figure out in your mind what you want to do. This is at least having something that is pre-baked and served.
I've myself used the Green Compass. I have, and I really like the way you divided people into tribes, and there are easy achievable actions for people who can start where their personality tends them to start, or where they like to start. So shout out to the tool, and people, I'll be plugging it in the description below, so go do check that out. And that is a great start for all of us who are beginning our journeys with sustainability, and just taking a moment to appreciate the fact that you've created a particular, that you show people the impact that they've created. That is one thing that I believe is very important. Another example that pops up to my mind is the way Blue Smart cabs exist. They
Yeah,
tell you after a certain period of time that this is the amount of emissions that you've been able to save.
yeah.
So I think making people aware of the impact that they're creating actually helps them, play the game even more
Absolutely.
and
In fact, what I
stay
didn't
there.
mention, Preet, and I think it's going to be interesting for the audience, is that you also earn badges. And these
Right,
badges are social media share worthy in terms of
right,
how they are
right,
attractive enough. So
right.
again, that's the other thing that would probably get the Insta generation excited enough, let's say.
Yeah, we need to make sustainability cool for everybody.
It does give it a good shot. I mean, making it cool, I think the tool does give a good shot. Yeah.
Right. So if we could also ponder a bit upon like the way you talked about the conscious shopper per se. I think this is one area where a lot of us people would be able to relate. We live in the world where fast fashion is predominantly rising. There are clothes we're buying cheap clothes every day, not made in a very sustainable way in developing countries where workers are not living in good positions, a lot of water being consumed in bring making t-shirts and stuff. So I want you to advise people like myself per se who who've actually fallen prey to the idea of fast fashion, so to say, and probably how can we, in the first sense, understanding why fast fashion is not a very desirable practice to follow, and why is it so, and if and how we can probably make a more sustainable decision to our clothing or to our fashion choices.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you use the word advice, so I'm very very afraid of being preachy and advising on these aspects. Quite honestly, because it's something that it's like I said at some point does come from within. It has to. But having said that, uh, now there are two things that are happening right as we speak. One, the industries or rather the brands that are generating the fast fashion outputs are themselves being questioned by different regulators and investors
They are.
on the greener portfolio of theirs. What are
Hmm.
you doing to kind of address that? Is the
Hmm.
question they are being asked. We may not be completely conversant with the conversations that are going out there because that's not something that everybody looks into. But coming from where we do, we've kind of kept a keen eye on that, and we know that's the kind of conversations that do come up a lot, and there's uh, a lot of scrutiny on that front,
I'm
right?
glad.
That's one. Two, at an individual level, I think all that one needs to do to begin with is uh, probably just ask yourself whether you want to really shop for the fact that you have a need, right? I mean, that's the only, I mean, it's again something that is very contextual to each individual. I would say
True,
each of us
true.
looks at it differently. But having said that, if you were to be conscious, and that's the tribe name, right? Conscious shoppers. If you were to be
Right.
conscious, it starts at a point where you say, you do you want to buy it? Is what you want to know. So what I would have typically done, and of course this isn't the something that I'm doing for years and decades, but over the last 5 to 10 years, what I've been doing consciously is that I kind of put down my own list of what I want to buy. I don't go
Hmm.
beyond it. This is not just about shopping for garments. I'm just saying shopping for anything, right? I kind of am very kind of conscious on that front. While that is so, there are also brands that have come out in the open these days, new
Hmm.
brands, new age brands, which are actually promoting a greener alternative to your regular purchases. You at
Right.
some point mentioned about the fact that you and me as individuals should probably ask for the change out there, right?
Hmm.
Now it's a supply and demand thing. Even the new brands that I said have come out, which are eco conscious and they promote eco friendly alternatives. But having said that, my point is there is a need for them to also see scale, for them to
Right.
see scale in the sense that today, why do you think the average shirt that we are wearing today versus an average shirt coming from the eco-conscious brand, the price points are different. Price point on the
Yes.
eco-conscious side is higher.
Higher.
It's always right. It's always
Right.
that case. And that's also because of the fact that the scale at which they can operate today
Hmm.
is limited for the fact that they are not sure if there's a demand that will meet the larger volumes that they could make. So who wouldn't want to make more of good if the good was to be adopted well enough, right?
Hmm.
So there is enough and more people who can easily make more of that eco-friendly good alternative, but the demand on the other side should also shape up. So
Right.
that is the dilemma, so to say, in the sense that where do we kind of balance it off? So there has got to be that demand side shift that will have to happen with the whole nudges and all of those aspects that we spoke about, and then there's the supply side shift that will have to come together, not just because of the investors asking for it, not just because of the regulators asking for it, but because of the consumers asking for it.
Consumers asking for it.
Yeah. So that's the crux of it all. Where do you begin is all about saying, what do you want to buy? Why do you want to buy?
Hmm. Basically questioning whatever spending that you're doing out there. Again, not both of us trying to be preachy, but since we're talking about being conscious, and
Yeah.
if you want to be associated with the particular area of people who are conscious, I think we can begin at questioning uh, what we are buying, why we are buying,
Yeah.
how is it made, what are the resources that went into the use of this one product that me buying has, and yeah, probably just start from there. And I think this is a very true thing to say for everything that works on that. Only and only if we demand something will people make that, and supply will come in that way. They will be able to leverage economies of scale, then slowly and gradually we'll get cheaper products, and then policies will again relocate themselves and be centered around what we are demanding and what the producers are producing. And citing another example is a question about buying EVs. People say that initially the upfront costs of buying an EV are probably higher, but if you try and average that out, and since EVs have also been in the picture since so long, and now the cost of when you calculate the cost for buying an EV, so to say, it kinds of averages out over the cycle and maybe is even lower. And the impact towards the climate, it is actually saving the harsh impacts that it is saving that. So start from us now, probably supporting or wearing or buying something which is environment friendly. Probably a bit of a more hurt to our pockets initially, but it is gradually going to be the way that there will be sustainable products all over coming into the picture, and that will only happen if we demand for that. So if we can afford to buy stuff that's sustainable and stuff that has been made with an ideology to save the planet, I think that's a good start for all of us. And to have that mindset is something that all of us need to develop, and I think that we'll be there sooner or later. And if you could, sir, share some light on buying certain appliances, if we should make sure that these are efficient, so to say, because at the end the point is saving energy or using energy efficiently. So what will be your take on that?
No, very obviously, yes. The answer is a yes, in the sense that, fortunately, so I think for the last decade or maybe a little more than that, there's been on these appliances something called a 5-star rating.
Right.
Most of us would have a, so there, that is, these are the kind of enablers that weren't there earlier. Earlier, when I say, I'm
Hmm.
talking of a decade back or a little more than a decade back, right? Today, with that being around, it's just about looking at, when you're buying an appliance, just looking
Hmm.
at that sticker. I mean, as simple as that, right? That by itself is enough for you to figure out whether you're making the right choice. Go for a 5-star. Yes, again, going back to the fact that capex or the initial expense would be higher.
Would be
Yes,
higher.
that's true. But be aware that it's also going to fetch you lesser electricity bills in the longer run, right?
Yes.
That's the idea of
Yes.
a 5-star product
Yes.
versus a 3-star.
Absolutely.
So do that math, and it'll obviously make sense for you that there is going to be more money in your pocket on a month-on-month basis after you make that purchase. Apart from the fact that as you make that purchase, you are displaying that trait of being a conscious shopper, right? That's very obviously so. And apart from that, when you talk of EVs, there is also enough people who say, are we really solving the problem with EVs? In the sense
Hmm.
that, because the batteries that are used in the EVs at some point give up in terms of how much they can help you run, and then they have to be disposed. And that's where,
Yes.
even going to the plastic issue, plastic is not the problem. The way we dispose it is the problem. Says so is the case with batteries, right? That's what is being questioned. How
Hmm.
do you dispose it? Because that's causing another environment problem. Or for that matter, another question that's asked in case of batteries is that what goes into making the batteries needs to be mined as well. So is
Yes.
it is it really solving the problem? So Yeah, at the end of the day, you're trying to compare what you're doing with fossils versus what you're trying to do with EVs. With EVs, the chances of you solving the problem of overall emissions and everything is much brighter than with the fossils, and
Right.
so move to EVs is the way to go if you can afford to. And this is what I do. I have an EV and I charge the EV with solar. So
Hmm.
I have a zero guilt trip whenever I take my car out,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
So I have zero guilt. In fact, to the point where my cost, ongoing expenses, which is typically the maintenance and everything that a car goes through, is as good as nothing, right?
Hmm.
What does an EV car have? It doesn't have a motor. So what sort of a
Right.
maintenance are we talking about? It's just about the fact that the batteries at some point will give up, but that's also going to run a good long distance, 5 years at least thereabouts, or maybe even longer, right? If you maintain it well, and then you replace the battery. That's all there is.
Absolutely.
But the point is, yeah, if you were to kind of look at taking it a step further, charging your electric car with the solar is probably taking it to the level where everything in the cycle is kind of taken care of in a way that you could.
Thank you for the insights again, sir. And while you're explaining stuff, I'm also realizing that yes, this is eventually this is the decade of change. That so many things are aligning completely. That environment friendly products are there all over. We just need to observe what is happening, and change is eventually happening. We just need to be a part of it. And the conversation that probably we'll be having 10 years from now on, that will be again on such an advanced level, because there will be a lot more environment friendly products in there, and we'll be questioning when or how to adapt, or how can the costs be actually aligned, because sustainability, I think, will be the focus from now on for every
Absolutely.
particular business that is there. And there was a report that I was reading. There was an Accenture's CEO outlook report that was released a few days ago, and they're saying that quite a lot of CEOs actually believe that sustainability is one of their mottos that they need to work for. And so that's a pretty interesting insight to know that people at higher positions like yourself, leading organizations, are aware, a significant portion are aware and are working towards that. So that is a sort of a relief to say, but the battle is half won if unless we contribute to it. So
Talking of corporates, the other thing you got to also let your audience know is that even the jobs of tomorrow will have an
yes,
aspect of sustainability embedded in them.
yes,
So
yes, that
that's
was going to
important
be my
also
next
as well.
question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. If you were planning to anyways bring it up. So that's
Yeah.
that's important. In fact, I will quote a study that was done by LinkedIn, done by Microsoft, and a bunch of others on this very subject. And what has been happening is that the jobs that are green, the green jobs, the sustainability kind of jobs,
Hmm. Hmm.
are growing at a rate which is much higher than the
Hmm.
supply of that skills is. So there
Right.
is that angle of you also as an individual and the audience that is
Hmm.
listening to it, looking at how you can embed sustainability. And by the way, let's be aware, sustainability is an aspect can be embedded in pretty much every function in a corporate. You from
True.
HR to finance to marketing to production to whatnot, I would say everything can have an aspect of sustainability embedded. So you got to really revisit, like I said, at some point, wearing that
Hmm.
lens of sustainability and then looking at your job with a fresh pair of eyes would be a good idea. Look at that, and that skill is going to kind of put you a step up in terms of your peers if you were to build that skill. We
Hmm.
at our end are looking at, of course, doing that for the corporate community, because that's the place where they need to kind of build that capacities and capabilities. We at our
Right.
end are also doing conversations with universities and what can happen where at the universities when the career choices are being made, right? At the
Hmm.
university, you're already making sure that you're deciding whether you want to sit for a placement interview with company A or with or versus a company B. If you can at some point also make that decision based on how responsible, how sustainable company A and company B are.
Hmm.
I've been told that Gen Zs, and this is again coming from a study, Gen Zs and Gen Alpha, the folks that will enter the workforce in the near future, are very conscious of working with responsible organizations, and that's
Hmm.
becoming significant as well. Right. So we
Absolutely.
are also looking at universities and what they will do. We are working with schools, like I said at the start of the call,
Hmm.
where we are trying to get them to kind of bring up that whole conversation on sustainability in the context of the kids. The larger point I'm making is I think we need to get this whole thing to a point where the jobs in the market that will be shaping up leading to 2030 are having enough supply of skills that can meet the
Hmm.
requirement. And that's how it is. So if you can address things in your personal space to begin with, it'll automatically feed into your professional space.
Hmm. Right. Wonderful to listen and be a part of this conversation and observing that change is happening. And also I was reading about an initiative that government of India has launched, which is the Skill Council for Green Jobs that they've launched
Yeah.
recently. So they're also, so the essence of my bringing this up is that there are a lot of things happening by the government as well. So all we need to do is look up, probably Google, and wonder what all is happening. And there was also recently, Mr. Anveshi and me were talking about a mission called the Life Mission, which the government has brought out, and which is also parallel to the conversation that we're having, that bringing in sustainability in our own lifestyles, how we can do that, and keeping the sustainable 17 SDGs in mind, what all we can do to bring that essentially. So, sir, if you could enlighten us a bit upon what the Life Mission is and how is that again relevant to this conversation?
Oh, it is 100% relevant. And uh, before we get to the life mission and what it is, I think you got to understand the way you've seen government programs over the period of
Hmm. Hmm.
over years. They typically do what are called mission programs that run for 5 years, 10 years, etc. Now, I said at some point that I was working with PwC. I was doing smart cities. That's one of the mission programs that they had
Hmm.
around 2014, 2015, thereabouts. Now, what
Right.
happens with the mission program is that you are looking at a roadmap which is longish, 5 years, 10 years, but you want to also make sure that you're moving step at a time and getting there. Now, this is called life mission, what we're talking of. And
Hmm.
that it started in 2023, goes on till 2027, right?
Hmm.
So the life mission was formally announced in November, just before the COP27. It was
Hmm.
announced along with the United Nations, right next to the president, sorry, the prime minister. So we had Prime
Hmm.
Minister Modi and the United Nations on the same forum, on the same stage, and the announcement happened. So now the way this is going to be brought out is that it is still looking at that very aspect of lifestyle changes. Life Mission,
Hmm.
LIFE, stands for LI, lifestyle, F for environment, lifestyle
Hmm.
for environment.
For environment.
Yeah, and what it's wanting to do is make pro planet people out of
Hmm.
us. Pro
Hmm.
planet people, PPP is what it is, right?
Yes.
Now
Yes.
that's the idea. And when they say pro planet people, when they say life mission, this is quite distinct about the mission. It isn't a
Hmm.
mission meant for India only. It is a mission that they're saying will be from India for the world. And that's
Hmm.
that's the very distinct aspect of how we could drive that 7 billion folks out there, how
Hmm.
we could drive that lifestyle shift, and what can we do to make that happen. So yeah, that's the important essence of what that mission is. They've at this point called out for ideas to kind of make that happen from the world out
Yes.
there. We ourselves have submitted a couple of ideas. We're getting to a point where we will have a final round of discussions on those ideas. We've been
Right.
selected till the final round, so that's something we'll see how
Amazing.
it goes. But importantly, the call of ideas is for driving what is called the change on the demand side. So they're saying,
Right.
let's first look at what we could do from an individual's lifestyle change
Hmm.
from a demand side. That is what will feed into the supply side, the corporate industry shifts, and that's a policy change that the government will bring in. Then they would want to then say supply and demand are acting in tandem. Now,
Hmm.
I think the ecosystem, which is the overall regulatory landscape, has to now bring in those changes that will help this flourish. And that's the
Hmm.
5 year plan of it all. It's a
Right.
wonderfully conceived program. I'm hoping
Absolutely.
and believing that this will come together well enough in the next course of the next 5 years. It's definitely got the right people backing it. So let's see.
Yes. Absolutely. Even I was glad to read the initiative and what all it entails. It's a pretty extensive and explanation on how what all we can do and what all is happening. I'll also link the initiative, the PDF to that in the description below, people. You can definitely go through that and see what is happening. So, all in all, what the learnings that I have gauged through this entire conversation so are that first of all, we tried and established that yes, there's a problem that is existing. We need to act now and we need to talk about sustainability. All of us have established that correctly. So that was there and that was done. Then we talked about how all of us can together as individuals can eventually cause significant change by building that community, by building that ideology, and further initially establishing it from a personal standpoint, adapting practices that we can, which are suited to our day-to-day routine, so to say, and then probably exuberate that change throughout the community, and leading people who are making policies to take notice of that people are aware and people want change, and bringing change for the people. So that was there. And then we talked about the lifestyle changes that we can bring. We also talked about the green compass that AtQuest Sustainable Solutions Private Limited has built, which is in itself a amazing gamified tool. And I'll also, as I mentioned, I will link that. Do go and check that out, and how that will help you and myself build sustainably and environmentally friendly day-to-day routine, so to say. And questioning our choices. Why are we buying? From whom are we buying? What is the impact that buy is having on the environment? And progressing ourselves, probably spending a bit more out of our pockets today, and supporting those businesses who have the guts, or you who have taken that opportunity to build sustainable businesses, environment friendly businesses, supporting them, and probably then heading forward to that and having a conversation with anyone who can. That was what I gauged, sir, from this episode. If there are any other learnings that you'd like to add that I might have missed.
No, not at all. I think we've definitely brought it all together very well with what you just said. I think it's all about getting one going. That's all there is. I mean,
Hmm.
there's nothing more than that. It's all about getting going, getting one going. First, one step at a time, baby step at a time. But that's all there is.
Okay, so people listening to this, people, will you, after this conversation, be going? I hope to hear a yes from your side when you listen to this. So I think we'll end this episode here, sir. It's been a wonderful time. It's been a wonderful conversation. And I think we've
While you're
added a
doing that,
lot of.
Preet, I have a message quickly. You at some point
Sure.
said 10 years down, things could be looking very different. And I'm
Yes.
very
Yes.
optimistic of that different being a lot better. And
Yes.
talking of the podcast that you do, I'm very keen to be on this podcast again, doing, let's call it the 1,000th episode, where
Absolutely.
we have achieved possibly what we
I'm
want to
glad.
achieve. This is what we are calling the decade of action. Let's hope the action is in the right direction.
Absolutely, and we will definitely have a conversation on the 1,000th episode. So that is scheduled as of now, 2030 someday, and then we'll discuss the change that we were talking about in 2023 on one afternoon,
Absolutely.
and see what all has happened. So, yes, thank you so much, people, for joining in and listening to this very enlightening conversation for myself. Hope it was for you as well. And yeah, you can like, share, and subscribe if you liked, and if you liked what you heard, and if it correlated and if it meant something to you. So yeah, we'll leave you there. Thank you so much for joining in. Bye bye. See you soon.
Thanks, Preet. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Just a minute. Before we end this, I just wanted to share with you guys कि मैंने एपिसोड क्यों बनाया सस्टेनेबिलिटी के ऊपर. तो वन फाइन इवनिंग ऐसे ही मुझे ख्याल आया कि यार मानो काफ़ी साल हो गए हैं और अर्थ डिस्ट्रॉय हो चुकी है, और भगवान या हायर बीइंग्स या एलियंस कोई भी है, वो इवेल्युएट कर रहे हैं कि व्हाट वेंट रॉन्ग, व्हाई वाज द अर्थ डिस्ट्रॉयड. सो दे विल प्रॉब्ली फिगर कि यार पहले तो ह्यूमंस आए इनटू द पिक्चर, है ना, इतना एवोल्यूशन हुआ, सो मेनी थिंग्स वेंट राइट. Then they started clearing land, developing, making houses, buildings, infrastructure. ठीक है, most of it was required also because population was growing. A lot of it was also not required, and a lot of other stuff started to happen. They went to, ran behind materialistic pleasures, and materialistic things बहुत important हो गई उनके लिए, और climate और अर्थ के बारे में सोचना उन्होंने थोड़ा कम कर दिया. तो इस चक्कर में जाके बहुत एक्सट्रीम सिचुएशन हो गई, तो अर्थ डिस्ट्रॉय हो गई. ठीक है, तो अब इस केस में दो लोग हो सकते हैं अर्थ में. एक वो लोग हैं जो सस्टेनेबिलिटी और क्लाइमेट चेंज के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, और आप और मैं जो इसमें इन्वॉल्व हैं इस कॉन्वर्जेशन में. एक साइड तो हम हो सकते हैं अगर हम एक सस्टेनेबल लिविंग की तरफ चलें, या क्लाइमेट चेंज को प्रिवेंट करने के क्या मेजर्स हम कैसे कंट्रीब्यूट कर सकते हैं, जैसे हमने बात करी, इन सब चीज़ों की तरफ ध्यान दें, अवेयरनेस क्रिएट करें. दूसरी साइड पे वो लोग हो सकते हैं जो नोइंग एवरीथिंग उस चीज़ को एक बैकफुट पे रहने दे रहे हैं, इग्नोर कर रहे हैं. तो बस मैं ये चाहता हूँ कि यार हम वो सिचुएशन ना आने दें कि ये वैल्यूएशन हो, और किसी दिन वैल्यूएशन हो भी, भगवान ना करे, तो यू एंड मी एंड ऑल ऑफ अस शुड बी ऑन द राइट साइड. वी शुड बी द पीपल हु were those who decided to talk about it and who decided to bring change. That being said, thank you so much for watching. If you watched till here, you have my heart. एंड इसी खुशी में कमेंट्स में भी एक हार्ट ड्रॉप कर दो. एंड डू लीव योर फीडबैक इफ एनी. जैसा भी आपको एपिसोड लगा बताना ज़रूर कमेंट्स में. एंड वील बी बैक विद अनदर एपिसोड वेरी सून. बाय बाय, चीयर्स, टेक केयर.